Welcome to the Creative Community Podcast presented by Destination Arate. I'm David.
And I'm Mark. And as brothers, we grew up telling stories together for over 15 years. And as adults, we wanted to continue telling stories together. And coolest part is, we want to invite you into our Brothers Brain Trust.
Yeah, we started the podcast to talk about the beginning of our story, the stories that influenced us, and then to continue writing our story together. And you guys get to listen along the way.
Yeah, and what that looks like is we're building a community of people who work together to find creative solutions to tell inspirational stories.
That means that today we're bringing you an interview. We are talking with musician and preacher Ben Everson.
Yeah, Ben is super cool. He was super generous to come on the podcast and share some of the stories that he has experienced over his time of writing songs and traveling. And so one of the things that Ben shares is he shares the story about the exact moment that made him want to start performing songs for audiences around the world, and as well as the most important step in his arranging and songwriting process. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Ben also shares the single most important idea that he wants to communicate in the future whenever he records a song, which I have been encouraged by his music in the past, but having heard this from him, just like having a conversation with him about it, it just makes me appreciate the songs I've already heard. And then when I go and listen to him again tomorrow, I'll be even more appreciative of it. So I hope that that does the same for you guys as you listen to this conversation that we have with Ben.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's get you to the stories that Ben Everson shares with us.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad to be on with you guys, and I took a little bit of time and explored some of the podcasts that you've done in the past, and kind of caught some highlights. So that's really cool. I love what you guys are doing. My name is Ben Everson. A lot of people think it's Everson. I'm not offended either way, but it is a long E, and there's been debates about that apparently, and because I've been called in to settle them. So no violence so far that I've had to break up over that, but I am a proud father of 4 kids. I've got a wife, and we have traveled for about 20 years around the United States preaching and singing. So that's how most people, when they come in contact to me, with me, rather, either they've seen us at one of our meetings, revival meetings, or concerts, or perhaps it's through YouTube or online streaming like Spotify or something like that. So that's where we are now. And right now, currently, at the time of this recording, we're living in Pensacola, Florida. We're hardly ever here because we're on the road most of the time. But I split my duties between preaching and preparing for sermons, as well as writing and recording, arranging music, and a little bit of writing as well. So that's kind of the everything in a nutshell.
This is a cool moment for us, Ben, because our first actual official interview was with someone who wrote songs for you. I wrote a couple of songs for you, so it's really a neat moment for us to be able to, have one of your writers on, and now have you on, and just get to know more about your work. And it was neat to hear her heart for how she's communicating truth through what she's writing, and so I'm excited to hear that from you as well. So, Mark, anything before we get into our questions?
No, I'm excited. It's like you said, it's been feel like this is long overdue. So I'm really excited to get into the
Hey,
conversation.
that's great. That's great.
So Ben, if anyone's ever heard you do like a concert or something like that in live, they've probably heard a story. Yeah, not sponsored. No free ads.
Yeah,
So
those of you who are listening and can't see, I'm drinking a Coke Zero caffeine free, and it's kind of obvious on the video here. So good stuff, right?
well,
Sorry, I interrupted.
no, that's okay. So for people who've seen you live, they may have heard you tell your story about how you had a little tape recorder and things like that. But we wanted to ask you, what you can share that story if you want to, or tidbits of it, whatever you think. But what was the moment that you said, I want to sing, I want to write songs, I want to record them for other people. This is what I want to do with the rest of my life. What was that moment for you?
That's a great question, and I'm going to do something different because, like you said, I have told that story, and it's true, about recording on cassettes, and then I got a second cassette recorder, and I record one voice, sing along with it, get 2 voices, sing along with those, get 3 voices, all that type of stuff, which is great, and it's true, but I was just doing that for myself, just for fun. But you asked the question, when was that moment, like when I realized, hey, this is great. I want to do this. Well, I've got something special here. I just got a package from my grandmother. the one who gave me that cassette recorder. And right here, you probably can't see this. Well, actually, the video's not too bad, but I'll describe it for you. This is a cassette tape. And on this cassette tape that she mailed to me, it says, Ben, 14 years old, Huckleberry Railroad. Now, why that is unique is that we went to, it's up in Michigan, it's near Flint. There's a place called Huckleberry Railroad, obviously, and it was during the summertime. And they have, I can't remember what the statistic is, but it's something like the longest running actual train that's still on a schedule or something like that. But it's a real deal. It's a real deal train. And then they have a whole village that's centered around that. And in the summers, they would do, big parties or get-togethers, for patriotic things, July 4th and Independence Day. And I remember walking around as a 14-year-old, hearing music, and I kept telling people, "That's not a recording. That's not a recording. I can't find it." And then everyone would tell me, "Oh, that's just a recording. They're playing a recording." I said, "No, it's real. I know it's live." So we were hunting around. Well, come to find out, underneath a pavilion, tent pavilion, there were four guys sitting. And come to find out, they were a barbershop quartet. And they were on their time off, but they were still singing anyway. And my ears picked that up because I sang harmony myself. And so I introduced myself to them, and I haven't heard this tape yet. Okay. I haven't heard it yet. I just got it. But I sat down at the table and I just started kind of listening, and they said, "Hey, well, do you know any songs?" I was like, "I know Amazing Grace." Right. And it's still that way, right? A bunch of Christians get together. Let's sing a song together. Well, what song should we sing? I don't know. It's always like Amazing Grace or Victory in Jesus. It's like those are the only two songs that were ever written, or It Is Well With My Soul. But anyway, so I said Amazing Grace, and they just happened to have a barbershop arrangement of Amazing Grace where they swap me in on the lead, which is the melody. You guys know that, but maybe not all of your listeners do. And that was awesome. About an hour later, we were going around, and here comes, I know it's a long story, but it comes to this moment. An hour later, they were in the barber shop singing barbershop quartet, fitting, right? And we heard them, so we decided to go over and listen. Well, they saw me in the audience. They said, "Young man, why don't you come on up here and sing with us?" I got so nervous, right? But I'd sung the arrangement once with them. And so I got up in front, and I don't know if this is a tape recording of me singing under the pavilion with them, or if this is the tape recording of me singing in the barbershop with the barbershop quartet. It's one of those two things. And then I saw the reactions of people, and the live element was introduced to me for the first time. And that changed everything, because it was like, wow, music's not just for me to do in my room, lost in my own head, but now I see the power that music has in the lives of other people. And that I would point back to as the moment when the Lord planted that feeling and that thought in my mind of, I really like doing this. So all that comes to that moment in Flint, Michigan, Huckleberry Railroad.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. That is awesome. I love the idea of the moment that you realize other people connect with this. It's not just me. And the live element, I've done a little bit of performing myself, and like they talk about the difference between, what's the difference between dress rehearsal and the opening night? It's the same performance, but the audience makes it 100 degrees different. And so I think that's really cool. How have you found that has your love of that grown as you've gone and performed in churches and things like that? And then what is your relationship now with like the YouTube element? What is the advantages and disadvantages that you've found to like live versus YouTube?
Yeah, those are really good questions, because to me, it comes full circle. So
Okay.
to answer the first part of your question, how has that grown? Well, so for a while, it was mostly about learning how to perform. So, but people have this idea sometimes in Christian circles that it's either performance or ministry, and it can't be both. Well, anytime you're in front of somebody, there will be elements of performance. So you might as well learn how to perform well. And if you want to learn that in secular, like classical music or whatever, and I did that, I went that route. I sang in a few musicals. I had a voice teacher for a while. I sang a few languages, not anything crazy. at a collegiate or postgraduate level, but just in high school, I learned how to perform so that I could learn how to control my nerves, so I could learn how to have good technique and then forget the technique. That's the goal of technique, by the way, is not, if everyone thinks about your technique, then you're not quite a master yet. When you can introduce technique and use flawless technique or really good technique and nobody thinks about it, now you're a master. Because that's the whole point of technique, right? Is to forget it so it just runs underneath the surface and then you can get about the business of ministering and connecting with people. So in churches, I love to see, and Christian colleges, because I've sung at PCC quite a bit and other places, the content makes all the difference. Now, I have fun doing fun stuff. And if you do musicals and, Music Man and Gilbert and Sullivan and, Oklahoma and, or even some of the modern ones, there's a rush to those things. And perhaps we can circle back to that because that was a spiritual lesson for me. But to keep a little bit more on track with your question, it's only deepened. And that, apart from the fact that God has led me to do what he's led me to do, what keeps me motivated for the road, which by now is starting to get pretty long and tiring, but what refreshes me is being able to reach out and connect with people that are there through music. That just, it makes everything worth it. And, we've had a few people get saved over the years through the music, and we've had a lot of people who've written, and it feels funny to talk about but it's not about me. It's about the truth of the word. It's about the Holy Spirit ministering through music to others. I mean, he's connected with music, right? Right there in Ephesians, where it talks about don't be drunk with wine, but be filled with the Spirit, right? And then speaking to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. So, I mean, the Holy Spirit and music, they're so closely related. One isn't the other, right? Because some people replace the power of the Spirit with the power of music. We don't want to do that, but the Holy Spirit uses that. So now, how do we come full circle back around to YouTube? Well, this can be a difficult thing. What I do is when I'm singing on YouTube and I'm singing to that camera, I am imagining through that lens. I play back pictures in my mind, video as it were, of people that I've sung to before. And so I'm remembering that little 5-year-old who had cancer, who wanted to come to my concert and, sat there and listened. I'm remembering that tired mother who uses our music to help both her kids and she go to sleep. I'm remembering that dad who wrote me and said, hey, I wanted to find good music that I could trust, but that wasn't boring for my teenagers, and I found you. And that, is very humbling. So as I'm singing to the camera, I try not to think of it as a camera. I try to think of that person on the other side of the lens, and that I think makes all the difference.
We could probably talk to you for 2 hours about that alone. I think
Hey, I love it.
that's a
I love it.
jam-packed topic. And I have to say that moment for you that you decided to do this for your life is like a Disney movie. Like, like I can see little Ben with his tape recorder, and then it's like fast forward a few years and Ben's wandering around the fair, finds these guys, and then all of a sudden like gets asked on
Yeah.
stage. Like we'll have to talk to some of our filmmaker friends, see what they think. We'll
Oh my
pitch it to
goodness.
them. We'll call you for the rights. We'll see that. We'll see about that.
Woo!
So, so
Oh,
let's say you wake up tomorrow and it's time to, write a new song or record a new arrangement at least or maybe write a new arrangement of a pre-existing song. You can pick from that grab bag of options there. What's the first step in your process, or what's the most important thing that has to happen as you go along that process? We're curious to know as much as under the hood you can show us. Your YouTube is jam packed. You've got master classes, you've got covers, you've got originals. I mean, if people aren't following you on YouTube, they're missing out. So I know you've already shared a lot of that with your audience, but is there one thing that you like say, I got to do this?
Well, I think because there's about 5 questions wrapped into
Yeah.
that and answer.
Sorry.
No, it's great. I love it. I love talking about it. Let me answer it in 2 parts. First part is, am I operating under inspiration or perspiration? Now that might sound a little gross to some of our lady listeners. I'm sorry, but you're already probably going to guess where I'm headed with this. In the beginning, I didn't start writing my own music. I was listening to other people's arrangements and writing them out. That's how I learned to part write, was doing that. And then I did venture out a little bit into arranging my own stuff, and uh, and then I tried my hand. The first song that I really wrote that wasn't as a kid. I think it was a love song for a girl I was dating in like ninth grade or something, and it was I still remember parts of it, but a guy lived across the street from us at that time who had worked in Hollywood, and he had a recording studio in his house. Now I'm grateful it worked out this way. If it were my kids, it wouldn't have happened this way because the world has changed and everything. But my parents let me go over there, and just with the guy in his house, and they'd kind of check with him before and different things. So I don't think badly of my parents at all. It worked out fine and such. So, but I say that simply to say he let me record that over there, and that kind of gave me the idea of wow. This was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. So I kind of tabled it for a while because I was like, I'm not really interested in that. So it didn't come around till later when I started. I actually had a friend of mine who, man, what's the best way to put this? He confronted me, is the best way to put it. Because I was arranging a lot of music, and a lot of it, most of it, maybe all of it, was um, just entertainment stuff for quartets and a cappella groups I was putting together. And he said, I'm really disappointed in you. And I said, why? He said, well, you're taking the talent that God gave you and you're only using it on entertainment stuff. Not that that was evil, but he said, you're just wasting it. He said, why don't you take your a cappella arranging and apply it to sacred music? And so I wrote my first sacred music arrangement of Mac Lynch's song "When God Is Near" or "My God Is Near." And I think, in fact, I know the Rejoice singers put it on their a cappella CD a couple years ago, and they souped up the arrangement a little bit. And I told them when they got it from me, I was like, listen, this is my first ever, so if you want to sweeten it up a little bit, you can. And they did a little bit, but um, I remember that because it was through arranging, and then I was like, well, I wonder if I could write my own stuff. And uh, and when you're writing music, sometimes you're inspired in the sense, not in the sense of the scripture, but you're riding a wave. For example, the song "I'll Pray Again" that I wrote, which is probably the one most people know the most, was one that was written very short in a very short amount of time. Didn't take very long to do it. Um, the words came quickly. My wife helped me iron out a few lines later on because you do that. But the tune and the song, the words all came together at once. A different one called "Don't You Fear," which is probably my second one that people know me for, was all perspiration. So I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to write a song in this meter, and it's going to have this many phrases, and they're going to rhyme in this manner, and I'm going to do it. But that one took me over the process of about 3 months to write. So there's the extreme because some of you are listening and you want to write music and you wrote one or two good songs that you're like, oh, this is so great. I wish it was like this all the time, and it won't be. If you want to become a professional songwriter, which I don't even know if I guess technically I am. One of the most humbling times and most grateful times I've ever had in my life was when Ron Hamilton was teaching on how to write music, how to write songs, and he wrote hundreds. And I happened to be sitting in the back, and he's like, songwriters like me and Ben Everson, we have, and I'm like, you put me in the same category? I'm like, no, please don't, because I felt so almost embarrassed that he would consider me in that category because I'm not. I'm not. You guys don't hear the songs that are terrible. I those get put in a drawer. No one ever sees them. But if you're an aspiring songwriter, know that if you want to make a living at it, number one, there's not a lot of money in it, particularly in Christian circles. That can't be why you do it. Um, it's okay to make money at it and help pay the bills and purchase equipment and stuff, but just be ready to allow the reward to be people who are encouraged. And
Mm.
if you can do that, that'll keep you going because sometimes you have to grind out a song that has got to sound like it was inspired and and was just, but in reality it was pulling your own teeth.
what you said was you have some songs that come really quickly and some that take a lot of work. But when you were talking about the one that came really quickly and it's actually your most popular, like that could be deceiving and think, oh, it took me 20 minutes and it's my most popular song. I'll just do another one in 20 minutes. But if you hadn't done the work of arranging all those songs for all those years before your friend confronted you, then you wouldn't have had that skill. And so I guess, do you see those years that you spent? I probably know the answer to this, but would you encourage someone who feels like maybe they've wasted time on things that don't matter? How would you encourage them and say, well, there's probably something in there that you've learned? Would that be something that you could say about yourself or?
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's a great way to think about it. And nothing, maybe I shouldn't say nothing, but 99% of stuff is not wasted. Even mistakes aren't wasted. Um, because you can take mistakes and you learn from those things. And I know that's cliche, but let me give you a case in point. Um, I I wrote a song about 4 years ago where um, I pushed myself to write as much music in a short amount of time as possible. We were moving out. I knew we were going to be moving out, um, and I had to finish stuff. And I wrote about 6 songs in 2 weeks. And some of the songs are really nice. Some of them, that's why I like working with Lori Lou Jones, because she's just such a fantastic. I'm assuming that's who you talked to.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I saw her. I saw her on the podcast
Yeah.
list, and so yeah, she is a fantastic co-writer, and you didn't ask me this, but sometimes we cross over into each other's domains, so and we don't worry about it. So sometimes I'll alter her lyrics, and sometimes she'll send me a melody idea. But she's a lyricist, I'm a musician or music guy. We we don't have a problem with that. But anyway, long story short, she sent me some lyrics, and wow, I just realized where this story is going. She writes so many lyrics, and they're all so fantastic in one way or another. Every once in a while, there's something that comes through that is like when I sit down and write something, it's just not the best. I feel so bad because I didn't mean to put her in a bad light because I was just realizing. And I know she won't mind. I know she won't mind. So you can keep it, and that's okay. But her lyrics were just a little bit like not quite as focused as she usually is. And then so I didn't, but I wasn't thinking lyrics. I was thinking, okay, I need to be as creative as possible. Long story short, I finished it. I did everything. I did the soundtrack, I did orchestration, I sang the song, and then I listened back to it and I started laughing hysterically. And my wife came in, "What's wrong?" I said, "Listen to this song." And she started laughing. It was the weirdest mashup of nonsensical music and lyrics all together that like had no point. And that was the biggest like mistake, and no one will ever hear that. I mean, it sounds like it has a point and it doesn't. And I thought to myself, this is an example of what I need to guard against. So because I have to guard against just doing something because I can. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
just because, oh, this is a cool chord change. Yeah, we'll have a purpose for it, right? Now, noodling around, writing crazy stuff, whatever, you can put that in there. We have done a lot of I'll call it karaoke. And what does that mean? We don't go to karaoke bars. That's not what I mean by that. What I mean is we'll take our equipment and we'll set it up and we'll just sing a bunch of fun music. And some of it might be Disney too. Oh no. I shouldn't make fun of that, but because some people, don't like that, and that's fine. But we will do what we would consider to be acceptable, fun entertainment music. And you know why we do it? The reason that we do it is we push and test our voices on those songs, just ourselves, maybe with some family friends that come over. And we do it on purpose so that we can mess around with music that's not sacred.
Mm.
so that I can take, okay, can I hit that note with power? Can my daughter sing that turn? Can my wife do this? Can my sons do that? And we test ourselves and we push ourselves on music that doesn't matter, but the whole thing matters because we're actually learning. Okay, can our voice do that? Okay, now we can take that and we can apply this technique over, like for example, what manner of man is this has a power note in it, and uh, uh, at the end of the bridge is kind of a bridge part, and bang, it's right at the end. Well, how will I know that that works? Well, from just noodling around and having a fun time in the years prior, I knew that note would work. So again, I'm kind of shotgunning here all over the place, but that's what your question made me think of, is all these things. You can use all of them: mistakes, um, happy accidents. You put them all, you keep them all in your mind, and then like, hey, remember that one time we did this thing? All right, let's do that again. When I used to do live groups all together, I'd say, hey, remember how we did that key change 2 years ago at the Harvest Fest? Remember we did that key change and you went like that? And oh yeah, let's do that. So everything can be used for something else.
That's so cool, because I think that's one of the advantages of working with artistic work, is that there's something about the process of going through a creative process that ingrains it in your brain. I remember doing working on a portrait for like 2 hours, 4 hours, and then the next day in church doodling the same portrait out, because I had memorized it as I was painting it. And it's kind of like that, where you can totally do that. You can be like, hey, remember 2 years ago when we did that thing? Everything is stored. And I think that is just so cool about creative work, how it's all useful for something along the line. So thank you for sharing that. That's really encouraging for me to know, went down this rabbit hole for a few weeks, and did this random art style, but it's like, hey, that's going to come in handy. The Lord can use that.
Absolutely.
So, but well, we wanted to ask you our final official question. We've kind of talked about where you came from, kind of where you got your start, and then we talked a little bit about kind of your current process. And we just kind of want to ask you, what is the most important thing or idea that you want every single one of your future songs to communicate?
Well, some of this flows from my purpose here on earth. So I think everybody needs to spend some time figuring out why does God have you here? Now, we won't be able to figure that out the way he knows it, but with our gifts, talents, history, abilities, inclinations, all those things, I think it's really healthy for us to figure out why we're here. And once you know your why, then you can think about the how. For example, I can tell you right now, the reason that I exist on this earth is to encourage God's people to keep going one step at a time. So that's why I'm here. My job is that of an encourager. So how do I do that? Well, I am called to preach, which a lot of people don't know because they think of me as a musician. So, and it's fine. I don't have to like wear that as a name tag, you know what I mean? But that is my primary calling. So, if preaching is king in my life, then music's going to be queen. And that actually helps me because I tend to think in terms of themes as I would a sermon. So every song that I write, I think in terms of it being almost a sermon. So I want to leave that person with, I call it putting handles on the truth so they can take it home with them, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that Captain Patch is so good at, you know, is there's going to be, how can I fear? That's one of his classic ones, right? And you start going through these songs that he did. If you go through my music, I don't always put it in the title per se, but I've tried doing that. I'll pray again. There it is right there. That's the thought. That's the main idea. See, it's like a sermon, right? Don't you fear. There it is. That's the main idea. What's the song about? Well, it's about not being afraid. How do you know? Because it says, don't you fear. you know, Another one I wrote called It's Your Turn, which is about when you've been praying for other people who are going through a hard time, and now you're the one facing the crisis. The first one I wrote that dealt with something personal to me as opposed to writing for other people was entitled "God Has Never Left Me." And so I don't do it with every single song, but I try to have that theme, that big idea that you can take with you, home with you. So I think in terms of a sermon, now it's not always 3 points in a poem, it can take different forms. But overall, that's why for a long time it still is our motto is be encouraged. It happens to also match with my initials, which is Ben Everson. And if you look at our logo, it's drawn in such a way that it looks like my signature because it is based on my signature. But if you squint, it also can look like it says "Be encouraged," like it's done on that way on purpose, and because that's why I'm here. So no matter what music I'm writing, whatever angle, even if it's a fun like a love song for a wedding, I want to encourage that married couple or an anniversary song or whatever it is. So that's the theme that I come back to. And there was a man in a church that actually awakened me to that because I didn't realize that. And he pulled me aside after a church service. He said, I want to tell you something. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but you use the word encourage or encouragement 10 times more than anyone I've ever heard.
Hmm.
And he said, and I think that's what you're all about. And so that was maybe 15 years ago. And so I'm 45 now. I'm about to be 45. So that was when I was turning 30. And, I was like, okay, that's it. So that's what I'm about. That's what our family's been about. And hopefully, even listeners to this leave the episode just a little bit more encouraged to keep going.
I've been listening to your music all week, and I've noticed that the songs that you either write or you choose to record that other people have written have this in common. You present to the audience a person of the Godhead, so the Father, the Son, or the Holy Spirit. It could be one, it could be all three, and then you have three responses. You have wonder, you have awe, and then as a result of those two, you worship. And I just wanted to know, you probably answered why that is in this last question, but that was what stood out to me when I was listening. I just hit Spotify, shuffle popular, and that's what stood out. There's a person, there's Christ, what manner of man is this? There's God, you pray again. There's the Holy Spirit, even when we think the Spirit's not listening or he's not there. But then it's always this idea of you of like, I am in awe of who God is. I am just wondering at why God is this way, but I'm going to worship him as a result of all of that. And so I don't know if you had any thoughts about that, or you've already answered it and you can just say, no, I already got that. We're good to go. So
Well, I think that what that brings up, number one, I didn't, that's a very organized way to put it, because I don't sit down and think, which member of the Godhead am I going to write about?
oh
So
sure.
that's a really cool observation, and that's encouraging for the future. But I have had a conscious thought pattern that encouragement, and it ties right in with my preaching. All right, you can't separate these things. Um, but the encouragement cannot come from me; it can come through me. But I cannot be the source of someone else's encouragement. Now I understand when someone says, "Hey, you really encourage me." I don't get all theological on them and be like, "Well, it's God that's encouraging." It's like, okay, because we all know people like that. Like, oh, you shouldn't ever applaud anybody ever. I don't agree with that. Well, they're getting the glory. No, you don't know their heart. You really don't. That's a whole nother thing. Okay. But anyway, but for instance, in I'll Pray Again, when I wrote that, I wanted the verses to express something somebody's going through, but there has to be that turn. There has to be the turn where I'm not the source of the encouragement. So we go to God, we go to his word, we depend on the Spirit, because uh, that's where I would be crossing a line that maybe other people wouldn't pick up on. But if I turn the music that I write into me providing the encouragement to someone, because I don't like to be too critical of other people, but I think in Christian music we have a little bit of this, well, a lot of it actually, where sometimes we're depending on that person to give us the encouragement. Like, oh man, if I could only meet that person, if I could only meet that person. And it's okay to have someone that's kind of a hero, or I've got mine that I look up to, but it's because I want it to be because I see Christ in them, not because of them. So when I'm singing, because my voice won't always be what it is now. When I'm 65, I still want to be able to sing music that even if I can't sing the same notes or the same brightness or even clarity that I used to, that the message will say, "Hey, it's not about me anyway. It's actually about who we all serve." And if we focus on that, we won't go wrong, and the songs will stay relevant.
Yeah, that's
That
awesome.
is great. Yeah. Well, Ben, thank you so much for this. This has just been absolutely incredible. Can you tell people where they can find you as far as like where they could maybe connect with you or learn more about your music or your preaching ministry?
Yeah, 100%. So the hub of everything is my website, which is just my name. So beneverson.com. And I redesign it like every 6 months because I get bored with it, and I'm like, oh, I gotta have this feature. And then I get all like what's that, minimalist. And then I'm like, oh no, it needs to have one main thing. And I'm kind of on that kick right now, but then I'm like, I need to have one main thing and then these three little things. And but if you go to my website, beneverson.com, you can link out from there to everything else. YouTube, I've
Yeah.
got a store that I've been revamping and adding a lot of stuff to. In fact, probably by the time this episode drops, finally we've got a written arrangement of His Robes for Mine, which is not my song. That's from Churchworks Media, but I did an arrangement of it, and I couldn't ever find the arrangement. And so many people have asked me about that. So my dad actually wrote it out for me, just to save me time, and we're going to be putting that on the website. I do all the social medias. I tried getting people off them because I thought, one world government, blah 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 blah. But hey, let's just get the word out to as many places, as many people as we can, and if they cancel us, then so be it. So I'm on all the social medias and Instagram and all that stuff. So find me on any of those places. I'd love to interact with you and be a blessing as much as I could be.
Once again, thank you so much to Ben. You can be sure to follow Ben Everson. That's Everson. And like he said, long E. And you can find his stuff on YouTube, Spotify, and Instagram, all those great places. And I know that you guys will want to follow him and his family on all those platforms. I know you'll be encouraged by their ministry.
And then, Mark, after you follow Ben, it's a proven fact that if you follow us, there might be one iota of encouragement left over that we can provide. And we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on SoundCloud. We're on YouTube. It's Destination Arete, Arete. And we have more episodes like this one. We have our interview with Lori Lou Jones, which Ben talked about earlier, one of his writers, his lyricists. And then someone, Mark, a listener named David, left us a comment on our interview with TJ Cunningham. And he said, I have struggled with this before, and it's great to know other people are out there wondering if what they're doing has value. And it's encouraging for me to remember like why I am painting, which TJ talks in that conversation about as an artist, where do you get your value and are you providing joy, which I think is something that Ben does is very well. So thank you to David for leaving that comment. And if there are those of you out here who are encouraged by this conversation or others, please let us know, leave us a review, send us an email or a message. We would love to just hear from you and let other people know about that as well.
Yeah, and if you want to send us a message like that, you can do that through Facebook or Instagram, Destination Arete, Arete. And if you follow us on those platforms, you can get information about like future episodes like this one. They may be interviews or they may be writing episodes where David and I do creative exercises. You can also hear about upcoming community activities that may or may not be in the works, and also upcoming Arete projects that we also may or may not be working on in the background.
And then, Mark, another thing that happened just today as we were recording this episode, someone new signed up for the newsletter.
Hey, that's great.
Newsletter subscriber. Yeah, I'm just telling you live. The audience is getting your reaction here. So if you want to be the first, just like this new subscriber to the newsletter, you too could hear about upcoming interviews, sneak peeks at future content. You can engage with the content we are making. We're going to send polls. We're going to send surveys. We're going to send opportunities for you to help us tell stories on the podcast. That's destinationarete.com/contact, or send an email to destinationarete@gmail.com as our subscriber did. To subscribe to the newsletter, that's where you can, be sure to hear from us when we have a new episode, when we have a surprise newsletter going out. Destinationarete.com/contact. And so after you've done all those things, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode, either a fun writing prompt or an interview like this one. We'll see you then.